In honor of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, January 20th, 2025. I'd like to just take a little bit of time to speak of how I am deeply inspired by the enduring living legacy of Martin Luther King. First of all, I am very appreciative of the fact that he was a Baptist minister who preached the gospel in a way that was moving and compelling and inspiring and instilled a sense of what I believe the proper intended use of religion is, which is to help people put into perspective the world and their place in it, and understand that the troubles that we face in our lives are very much like the same troubles that humanity has been facing for a long time, and that it is a long course of history that has set precedents as to why things are the way that they are right now, and that helps us to be able to better understand where we are and when we are in terms of that very human story. And this gives us power because it gives us knowledge of where we've been, but then it also gives us a unique and powerful opportunity in this moment to re-envision a better future and to consciously consider how we might apply the lessons learned from the past, the knowledge that we have gained, and the experiences that we are having in the present tense, and take that and wrap it in with the insights of the needs of now, and formalize a way in which we can thoughtfully and intelligently choose a better way forward, and to live out that with intention, and to infuse that belief and faith into our commitments of service and how we choose to show up in the world. And I thought it was very honorable of him to express to everyone from every walk of life that you belong just as much as I belong, and that your struggle is very similar to my own, and that if we could just meet each other face to face on common ground in terms of understanding, the human struggle is not much different for everyone. That these few things that have come up over time in the biases in terms of how we look at each other and consider one another are not based off of real, thoughtful considerations of that there's something different about us, but rather this sense that we have to pit against side, choose an other so that we know better who we are. And Martin Luther King Jr. was really good at helping to bring it on home to everyone, that it doesn't matter who you are or what you got or who you know or where you've been or what you've done. What matters is, what are you going to do now? That all of those things, yes, is part of your life, your history, but it doesn't have to be a part of your future. That everybody has a choice to wake up one day and decide to do things differently. And I was really compelled by many of his speeches, mainly the drum major instinct, because to me it really spoke to my heart. because I follow my heart song, which to me is very much in step with what he meant by the drum major instinct. I'm compelled to live my life in such a way and to pursue things in such a way because they are significant and they're substantial and they have meaning. And it's what I believe I was brought here in this world, in this time, in this place, to be able to do in service to my fellow humanity. And I very much believe in the idea of being prepared to be worthy, to be able to sit on the right or the left hand side of God and to be worthy of that station, not because it was, offered to me or that I, worked towards achieving that, but that just by my very existence, who I am, where I am, when I am, and who I am, made me the person that belonged there. And then that gives me, a way to kind of look at my life in the sense of how can I guide myself on the daily, through my daily life experiences, in following my heart song, which is leading me to where I chose to be long ago, long before I came. That purpose, that place, that set intention deep within my soul print values that is calling me to come to be where I belong, in this place that has been prepared for me. And I follow my heart song that I know is leading me there. And how can I take the wisdom of those who have come before to teach the good news of, how to live a good life, how to be a good person, how to overcome the human tendencies to fall short of our own graces, and how to continuously strive for self-development and to be a good person, and to not just, virtue signal your beliefs, but to command them with presence and to be them, to enact that, to be so sure of that being who you are that there is no question in your heart. And while I have in my lifetime fallen short of my own, values and virtues and ideals of how I should be in the world and show up in the world, I found that every time that I've fallen short of that grace, it was an opportunity to learn really truly what my soul values are and how better to align with them. And then very much recognizing my place in the world, my place of belonging. Because every time that I've fallen short of grace, it has always been trying to involve myself in a place where I don't belong, amongst people whom which I could never belong. Because my soul print value would be compromised because of their lack of integrity to respect the soul print value of other people. I'm very much in lockstep heart song with Martin Luther King Jr. in terms of his ardent push for, the liberation of African Americans, for the true freedom of Black people, to recognize that there was still and unfortunately still to this day, less so than it was before, because there were many great strides that MLK and many others did to break down those barriers that were segregating and creating a culture of slavery, enslaved to ideals, enslaved to systemic oppressions, enslaved to systemic racisms. And, the fight still goes on. I mean, to this day, it's very sad to, hear that the incoming American president administration intentionally has sought to completely eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, which were not perfect and had many flaws, but they were workable. But they gave a legitimacy to the fact that there is systemic oppressions and racisms that we must break down by building up something that reinforces an integration and an acknowledgement of the fact that segregation is a bias that's not just in the minds and hearts of people, but also built into the systems that are reinforced by individuals that are put into positions of power that use their overt biases to further stifle the advancement of individuals to break free from the long-standing repercussions of segregation and slavery. So to me, it's a huge step backwards, and I know MLK would be out there preaching still to this day if he were still alive, heaven bless him, trying to fight for equality and to stand up and say, diversity, equity, inclusion was a real viable mechanism by which we can right some very wrong wrongs. And so in thinking about that and knowing that MLK would have had a real honest stance against that, he would speak out it with conviction, and he would be able to compel so many people to listen, and he would take his beautiful scriptures and weave them into this fabric of creative storytelling that would bring people into a perspective of saying, really, is that the kind of world that we ought to be living in? Do we not have a higher ideal for ourselves to strive towards? Is it not important that we make sure we're taking steps forward and not allowing ourselves to be forced back into these dark times when whole entire populations of people were put at an intentional disadvantage, left by the side of the road, not able to have basic civil rights and treated with basic human dignities? And to me, it's just like, if there's oppression of anyone, it's an oppression of everyone. And so if we are not doing all that we can to expand our capacity to open opportunities for everybody and to give them, a way by which they can leverage themselves in society, and for there to be a scaffolding of our organizations and our institutions and our social constructs, in order for people to have something to lean on, something to grab a hold of, something to step onto, something to leap off of, something to, to stand on edge and to try to further advance themselves with at least the little bit of guarantee that that hope for a better world brings. It says we've built these capacities into our society to help to elevate everyone, the masses, all together as one. And when we find there's shortcomings in our society that's not able to account for the raising and leveling up of life for certain populations of people, we ought to do what we can, how we can, in all the ways we can to help to elevate them up to, a baseline standard that, we all can agree on is the good life. And that was something else that I learned recently by somebody who put into perspective what MLK said in regards to the drum major instinct, was that he gave us a new way to look at the good life, and that it's not based off of the things that you have, but what you possess in your heart, and what are your soul values. What is your sense of, what you're doing to be in service to your fellow human being? And what are we as your fellow human being doing to be in service for you, so that we can all rise up together? And that very much resonates with my worldview and my personal intentions in regards to the work that I'm trying to advance in the world, to be in service to humanity and to the future. And in times of trouble, and in times of doubt, and in times of uncertainty, and certainly in dark times of not knowing what sort of hope there is out there, I often turn to the words of MLK, because in his inspiring legacy, just what little bits of it have been left behind for me to even consider him as a person, because he was before my time. I find a lot of strength because I see in who he was part of me that I'm trying to bring out, that can also be so inspiring and such a accomplished servant for others. And I find strength in reflecting on him, because he makes me be reminded that, not everything in the world is a total waste. Even when things look really dark and unfortunate, there's always that light. And as he says, the light will always overcome darkness, never the other way around. And when I look at what a lot of these people are trying to say in terms of justifying removing diversity, equity, and inclusion, was because they have to, we should finally live up to what MLK said about being judged by the content of your character, not the color of your skin. And that was just, a talking point that many, people, I mainly heard it coming from crowds of very privileged, elite white men, is trying to say that we shouldn't take initiatives that make decisions on, what sort of opportunities we're going to afford others based off of the color of their skin, but it should be based off of a merit. And to me, things that are moralist, merciless, manipulative, mean, or even monetary are not meritorious. And these, very rich and powerful elite white men who have been very privileged in their lives don't know what it's like to not have just basic opportunities of a fair shake in the world. You know, most of their relationships have been based off of who you know, what you know, and groupings of people that have formulated little insulated pockets of thriving, and where they've become insulary in their self-reinforcing, privileges and money and wealth accumulation, and their capacity to control people in the population and wield power and influence over others, these sorts of things. They don't know what it's like to not have a chance to just make it in the world in such a way where you don't have to struggle at trying to survive to the point where you have no time to make a life, to search for meaning or to make meaning, to develop yourself as a person and to enrich the lives of others, to formulate relationships in community. So many people that are left to the wayside without these opportunities are not able to involve themselves in the world. And so the world really is missing out on their beautiful and wonderful contributions. And it really wouldn't take very much, especially in, comparison to how much we give away of the fake money they create anyway to subsidize, luxury apartments and golf courses and vehicles and airplanes and yada yada, the list goes on, where they subsidize those sorts of things being created, but there's very little invested in, the social good for the advancement and development of a baseline standard of living that is living the good life, that is of a quality standard, that isn't about owning a bunch of things, but it's about possessing your own life and taking control of it and self-determining, and for your life to be more than just, working a job for labor wage, in a job that probably doesn't respect your human rights or your safety or your sense that there's more to life than work. And we really should invest in those sorts of things, because it would profoundly change the quality of human life overall for everyone. There's many people that are in positions of power who profit from the, subjugation of others, the submission and suppression of others, effectively creating slavery, because it's, they're fed distractions, bread and circuses, as they say. We'll give you enough of this stuff to keep you propped up and alive, and we'll keep you pretty well distracted, so, you won't rise up against us and complain about the fact that things really are not as good as they could be, should be, and would be if we cared enough to try to make things better. And they keep so many of the people, distracted, so they can't rise up together to be able to say, hey, it would actually improve the quality of all of our lives if we just took some time to invest in these things, give each of us, a better chance at a fair shake, a scaffolding of opportunity to live the good life, and to make sure that nobody gets left behind, because why should they? Nobody should. We would, have to compromise on a little bit of the comforts of the, insanely rich people who are profiting from the subjugation of people. But, a little bit of adjustment there, not taking from them, but just denying them the capacity to continuously exploit other human beings, and intentionally invest in the advancement and the leveling up of life for all people to a baseline standard, so nobody gets left behind, and to give them the opportunity at a fair shake to really make for themselves a really extraordinary life, because we work together to solidify and secure for ourselves and our posterity the good life, right? Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. These were things we promised ourselves that we were going to commit ourselves to do together for each other. All of us. That's what America was about. And we've fallen short of that time and time again. And it's not because we haven't tried, but it's been because those people who have taken control in positions of power have been making decisions that have not been in the best interest of all parties involved. And they have been willing to put certain people at a disadvantage in order to skew advantages in favor of themselves and their little insulated pockets of thriving. And so we have deepening inequality. We have an increasing deficit that will never be able to be paid down enough for us to justify investing in social causes. And the rich will continue to get rich. And the power of the people to live a good life will be significantly reduced. There is eventually a breaking point in all this, but the very rich and powerful already perceive that that's on its way. And they say, the world's already screwed. Let's just, go to Mars and we'll abandon ship, or we'll build up, fortresses, to be able to hide behind when shit hits the fan and the world goes to hell and, all the people rise up. They won't be able to get into our gated communities where we have insulated ourselves in protection. They're just ready to let it all go to crap because they would much rather do that than to face the responsibilities of all of us working together to dig us out of this hole that we've put ourselves in. To, lift everybody up into a state where things don't go bad. They actually improve and get better. And that everybody becomes involved, everybody is welcomed, nobody gets left behind. Life begins to improve for them, Overall health, well-being, mental health, all these things improve. Addictions go down and probably cease almost altogether. And we see more people intentionally, actively participating and contributing to society. Our economy would grow and flourish, and it wouldn't be based off of, mindless consumption, waste is growth mentality. It would be intentional consumerism, thoughtful consumerism. And our economy will shift to be more based off of insights and ideas and innovation that can help us to broaden our scope of understanding ourselves, our planet, our place in the world, our place in the universe, and do so all without disadvantaging anyone. Expedient policies or, technological advances will never be able to solve for those problems because they fail to answer the question of humanity, our humanity, and what's right, just, reasonable, fair. And that's something that I learned from MLK, was just that we have to be able to hold everything up to a foil to test it, whether or not it has integrity. And if it's not just, and it's not right, and it's not reasonable, and it's not fair, then we shouldn't be giving any legitimacy to it. We shouldn't be granting it any sort of authority. We shouldn't be taking on any measure of action if it can't at least follow that basic test under just basic scrutiny. And, I think about how MLK was assassinated because he was deemed a threat, because people recognize the power of truth to open the eyes of people who have long been, intentionally blinded from the truth, who have been distracted That's where the concept of the woke culture came, was that, they said you gotta stay woke, you gotta stay aware of where we are in the historical context, in the fine context, and recognize what it all means in terms of like where we are in our intentional progress into the future. Are we building out for the kind of future that we want to live in, that we want our children to live in? I certainly don't want to live in a future where anybody is discriminated against based off of their race or their ethnicity or their country of origin or their gender or their sexual orientation or their age or any of these things. And I don't like the fact that there are people in positions of power that are creating institutionalized racism and they're getting away with it. But staying woke is supposed to say, like, I'm aware that that's happening. I'm aware that people in positions of power really don't want certain parts of the population to get a real chance at life, a real fair shake. That they are pitting people against each other and side against side, keeping people distracted. So you have to stay awake and aware of those sorts of things. You have to understand where your rights are being taken from you or they're being denied to you. And again, the concept of anyone who's oppressed, everyone's oppressed. And so, it's understandable that those who were against the woke culture really came from these, very privileged elites who were pushing back on the fact that, people were calling them out on their bullshit. You shouldn't have the right to treat people that way. Disregard human life, harm others intentionally, and have no consequences to your actions, And so, though, again, much like DEI programs, woke culture got a little out of hand, but that's the way anything will go. There's extremes of everything, and there's a spectrum within there, but we have to hold ourselves accountable to really stay focused on that human-centric involvement, that moderation, that golden mean, that middle way path that we can stay on that keeps us consistently aligned with the best interest of all parties involved. That we're never going to make a racist person stop being a racist person, but we can certainly stop them from having power to use their racism to suppress or harm other people. And then we certainly can't have people who use racism as a means to suggest that they're being victimized and to make it so that they can't be held accountable for things that they perhaps were doing wrong. As they would say, you can't always play the race card. So you can't have the major extremes of things. And, and then the concept of the cancel culture, you can't be so about canceling everybody that people aren't allowed to free express and to be themselves and true to who they are. We need to have positive and negative social sanctioning in order to make sure that we understand how it is that we ought to be treating one another. But certainly I think that no person or group of people should be able to take a mob attack on any individual and try to remove from them their sense of identity or personhood and capacity to live. Now, with, of course, the exceptions of if you're doing intentional wrong, harm, crimes, these sorts of things, we can't allow those sorts of things to go on. And we as a society all have the mutual responsibility to stop that kind of stuff. But we need to allow each other a safe space to be who we are and to do the best we can to engage in open discourse and to invite respectful dialogue so that we can find a way to find a common ground between our differences. Because every conflict in society is based off of just a misunderstanding between the two different sides, and there is a way to reconcile that. And I believe that's really what Martin Luther King Jr. understood about people. It was one of my most favorite things about him in one of his speeches he was giving, where he explained one of the times where he was sent to jail, obviously, under the times of segregation, and he was preaching to the people who were in jail, and along with it, the police guards there heard him talking, and he was able to find common ground with them, where these white police officers were saying we're justified and segregation's a good thing, and that because black people aren't as valuable as white people are, and they're not as deserving and these sorts of things. And MLK was just like, well, you guys are just as poor and insignificant in society as we are. The only difference is that you're convinced that your impoverishment and your lack of opportunity in society, though it's comparable to ours, well, at least you have the race card to play. Say, well, at least I ain't black, and so he really brought it home to them. It's like, look at where we're coming from, guys. It's like we're all we're saying is that society is, inherently unjust for everyone. But it is mostly because of the fact that y'all are too busy being distracted by this concept of race that you're not able to realize the fact that life sucks for everyone, and that it ought to be better. And it could be if we didn't waste all our time distracted by these irrelevancies, these things that they've made into an issue, and then forced everybody to, be all, in rebellion about. And, granted, it came from a long precedence of slavery in society, and breaking that systemic, mental construct in people's head. It took a lot of intentional work for people to realize that, every life is valuable. But I still liken it to, the present day sense of we have the incoming Trump administration is trying to demonize immigrants, and to keep people distracted, to make them think, we need to focus on immigration, such a dangerous thing. These are bad hombres, and, we need to get them out and all this. And, what I say to that is what we need is less ego and more amigo. There's no reason for us to look at immigrants as being, bad inherently. All humans have the capacity for good and for bad in them, but given the right circumstances and situations and opportunities, we can bring out the best in them. And I wholeheartedly believe in that, and I believe that's something that MLK very much believed in as well. That's why, him as a person really resonates with me. And I wish that there were more people like that in the world. And I'm grateful every day that he existed, and that he had such a profound and lasting impression left on the world, and that we still celebrate him to this day for all that he accomplished. And I really wish he was still here to be able to keep the good fight going, to help make the world a better place. Because while this administration is keeping us busy, pitted against sides and worried about some fabricated enemy in the form of an immigrant, we are missing out on the whole point of the exercise, which is to be able to make the world work for 100% of the people here without the disadvantage of anyone. And we have a real chance to be able to do that. And I hope that today will be a reminder for all people of how we can proceed in progress to make the world a better place for everyone. And we have MLK to thank for that, and many others like him. So with that, I thank you for your valuable time and attention, and I'm grateful for this day. And I'll continue to live on with the same spirit of MLK's. I have a dream. I have a dream that one day America will live up to the integrity that he taught us. With that, good day. Be well.